record on this computer. So 3, 2.
Hi, this is Greg Young.
And this is Bill Malik. And you're listening to Real Cybersecurity. So tell me, Greg, how's the weather up there these days?
It is brilliant. I am not being full in the nook of the north. I have not had to break out the snowshoes and such. Green grass. It's what's going on.
Yeah, the mucklucks.
Yes,
Miss the mucklucks.
Yeah. In the Army, I spent quite a bit of time up in the far, far north, which is ridiculous because I hate being cold. So I'm a really bad Canadian that way. But maybe that makes me a good Canadian. I don't like being cold. I'm not enthused by it. So despite my fascination with Wim Hof, the Iceman, but yeah, no, winter is something to be endured, but no, so far so good. How about yours?
Not bad at all. It's been kind of wonky. We've had a couple of nights that are below freezing, but then, we've had a couple of days where it's up into the mid 60s again. So not entirely sure if the weather knows what it's doing, but it's fun to watch. And with the new time, I get the most beautiful sunsets. My apartment faces south, which is that way. And so I get these wonderful, brilliantly colored sunsets. I guess now that Mauna Loa has awakened, we're going to get even more brilliant colors in the sky at night, right?
You do your sunset observances. That's awesome.
Absolutely. Around 4:30.
Yeah.
Another couple hours of work and then call it a night.
Yeah. Speaking of democracy that we're talking about earlier, it's remarkable that despite everybody not liking daylight savings, that we're still stuck with it. I don't know what it's going to take to get rid of it. So,
well, I know there was a bill in the U.S. Congress. I don't know which side voted yes and which side is kind of stuck. It would be nice if they just decided. I mean, there are two real answers, right? One is everybody goes on to UTC and we just say, to heck with it. It's arbitrary. Right. Or the other is we can do what Saudi Arabia did up until a couple of decades ago, which defined 6 a.m. as the time when the sun comes up over the horizon, wherever you are. And
oh, wow.
You can do entirely local or just have one standard, but to tie something to it, we need to liberate ourselves from the tyranny of the mechanical clock, which
absolutely
that was IBM's first set of products when it was computing, tabulating, and recording CTR before Watson was invited to run it. It was butcher scales, time clocks, and simple adding machines. Very, very,
right.
Very simple stuff. And then he made international business machines, and the rest is history. So
I've lived in a country that didn't do the time change, and it was liberating. And you almost looked down at people when they had to get all their meeting times straightened away twice a year, and those peasants. Right. And remarkably, Saskatchewan, the province, does not do. I believe it's Saskatchewan doesn't do daylight savings, and they're a province of like wheat farmers. So I'm like, hey, come on, it's not the farmers that are doing this. Big mechanical clock, I think, is behind this. So
yep, absolutely. Well, Arizona hasn't done it for years. In fact, there was a very funny referendum. I think it was the Tucson Citizen. It may have been the Arizona Star, which is published out of Phoenix, but one of the two major newspapers in the state ran a survey, and they were looking for the best reasons. And the negative, don't do daylight savings time, was a woman who wrote in saying, I can't stand it. I hate it. It's stupid. I don't care if I win, but I just needed to get that off my chest. And the winning answer on the positive side is very brief. It said, well, it's about time the government started saving something. So.
Right. Yeah, time services are a key piece of the security foundation as well. Of course, trusted time services.
Yep.
As being a key part of that. So, yeah. So, much like randomness, it's one of these foundational elements that we take for granted, or we accept weak substitutes for either correct time or correct or true randomness, or close to true randomness.
Yeah, the whole pseudo random number generator. I just read that they were going to do away with leap seconds.
Apparently. Right. Yeah.
One more. 2035 is going to be the last time we have a leap second for like 100 years. After which I personally won't care. I mean, somebody will care.
Yeah, it's remarkable. Yeah, the whole business around randomness, it's in cryptography is so undervalued, and well, it's not in, I think, true cryptography sense, but for the roll your own kind of crypto services or an application trying to do randomness that way, like it's much like passwords, like the often this link of entropy between sort of a, hey, if your password is this long, it'll take this many years to break. Well, no, because you're probably not constructing it truly randomly in terms of the distribution of your special characters and the like. You're going to slam a special character at the end. Research tells us, and you're going to start your capital letter at the start because that's how words are constructed. So it's actually not that strong, or it's quite easy.
Yeah.
So true randomness, true time. It's you can't take it for granted.
Was there a software defect in the network time service recently? That seems to come to mind. I'm not exactly sure, but apparently,
Yeah, that could be why we're talking about it. We came across that, but
yeah,
suborning time services, much like kind of owning too much of the blockchain. You can kind of change things.
yeah, 51% attack on the blockchain, and it's gone.
Mm.
Yeah, that actually came up. One of our colleagues asked for examples of successful commercial uses of blockchain, and it was like, I don't know.
Yeah, I was on the same chain. It's funny.
Yeah.
I struggle too, and I said, well, if pressed, I could stretch and say, that art fraud, reducing art fraud, but otherwise, or where otherwise there isn't a single source of truth.
Right. Well, it's kind of like
eBay is a single source of truth, right? They control their own listings. I don't need a blockchain to, trust the auctions on eBay.
Well, right. And there it's simply a matter of critical mass. And there were competitors to eBay, and they did not survive because they didn't have that social inertia. Is there such a concept? If you don't have enough people participating, then it's something like a 51% attack. It doesn't have to be 51%. I mean, the 2016 election, or more poignantly, the whole what was that hack in Texas in 2015 that emboldened the Russian intelligence services, where they started rumors about National Guard action. The name escapes me. The whole point was the ease with which small pools of individuals can be misguided,
Right.
confronted with repetitive evidence that turns out to be false. But and to me, that bears on. And this is one of the things that I know we wanted to talk about. One of the promises of open source software is it's open source, so it's right out there. So millions of people can look at it. Notice the use of the word "can."
Right. How much of your week have you spent looking at open source software code to check for security?
Right. And we've got, well, let's see, the latest one was it Ripple 20? But there have been 3 before that where they found, 7 or 10 or 12 or now 20 security defects in TCP/IP protocol stacks that have been on GitHub for 15 years or more and incorporated in millions of copies of tens of thousands of products. And it turns out that they're flaky. It turns out they're completely insecure. So the software supply chain is predicated on the fact that everybody can look at it. And it's the same kind of leap of faith that led people to the chain of reasoning that said mortgage-backed securities are a brilliant investment because everybody who has a home will do everything they can to make their mortgage payments. So therefore, if I take a bunch of mortgages and securitize them, build a bond that's backed by the payments, then that's going to have a AAA rating. And then you got, mortgage brokers saying, wow, there's a market for bonds, for mortgages, and we can then securitize them. And once upon a time, I mean, when my parents bought their house, I was a kid in Ann Arbor in the 50s, they knew the banker. I mean,
right.
He lived next door, right? Hamilton, Stasheff, I can't remember the name of the family. Anyway, So it wasn't like, some anonymous transaction carried out over an app on your phone. There were no phones with apps. There were no computers with apps like that. You knew the person who was giving you the loan, and he knew you, and your kids went to the same school and all that stuff. So there was this underlying assumption that whatever we do, a mortgage is going to be AAA rated. And then mortgage brokers came in, and it got to the point where the most frequent uh, job, most frequent employment of people applying for mortgages was astronaut.
Hmm.
And the reason was there was a pull down list of, of forms of employment, and astronaut was the first on the list.
Right.
So these mortgage brokers say, astronaut, let's get on to the next thing, want to sell these things out. And of course, the whole thing fell apart because of this unexamined dependency. And now we're seeing that with open source, that there is an enormous amount of code out there that people are using. I mean, to me, the nightmare scenario is somebody comes up with a recommendation algorithm that works for, picking the next song. And it's good enough. And so people use it, and everybody's pretty good at picking songs. And then somebody doing their doctoral work in, biomechanics needs to find an algorithm to determine which course of treatment is best for a particular obscure, form of cancer, let's say. And they find this very popular recommendation album that's been deployed millions of times, and everybody gives it a 4-star rating. So he or she just slaps that puppy in there, and now you've got this diagnostic tool that's riding on the back of a piece of software that was probably dreamed up by a couple of guys doing Jolt Cola,
Right. What we're talking about here too is, of course, software bill of materials, or SBOM, that,
Right.
this ingredient list, which is trusted, trusted is how much you put in it, but an open source code can change quite a bit. So some libraries use same constant, like some of the crypto libraries have some constancy, some fork. But the actual contributions, though, to those open source libraries by people who are using them for profit is usually non-existent.
Right.
So all the people who've used those crypto libraries, for example, they're not giving back quite often. Yeah, there's probably some exceptions, but generally they're taking, because why are they using it? Because, it's easy. Yes, there's some benefits in standardization, but there's some monetary reasons they're doing it, right? Because they don't have to make that thing.
They don't have to make it. It saves time.
Right. So I believe some big companies are, scanning that code, and they are themselves saying, hey, look, here's something we shouldn't do with this, or here's some conditions we're going to have to look for outside of the library. So if this condition comes up, that could be a buffer overflow. Let's not allow that.
Right.
I firmly believe that, but I don't think they're contributing it back because, well, that's somebody else's problem. Or why should we help our competitors?
Exactly.
So that's how these go in. And the craziest thing I saw the other day, which made me drop my head in despair and bang the desk, was once a code has been labeled secure, it's secure forever. Once it's been scanned, and they're like, so like, oh my God, are you kidding me that, any attempt, let's take the lockpick analogy, like a way to open a door, some new way hasn't been tried yet. So therefore it's secure because, there's always new kinds of attacks, there's always new kinds of exploits. So yeah, anyway.
Yeah.
Maddening.
Well, that was a paraphrase of Elon Musk's comment on why it was okay to dismiss 8 of the 14,000 people who are supporting Twitter, was because the code's secure. We don't need security people anymore. It's already fixed.
Oh, I didn't hear that was said.
Yeah, that was
Oh,
one of
boy.
his rationales. I mean, he spins off rationales like another, well, anyway. The point is, you're exactly right. It is a constantly evolving environment. You've got very smart people who are working to find shortcuts, and sometimes they stumble across something, and then they sometimes will, if you're on the good side, you'll contact the Zero Initiative, ZDI, and get some money for it. By the way, sports fans, if you find a working exploit in Microsoft Exchange, ZDI will give you a check for $250,000 to report it to them. Last time I looked, and this is more than a year ago, we have at least half a dozen people who make more than 100,000 a year just by submitting defects to ZDI. And I think the number's gone up since then, because the amount of downtime people have at home just to futz with code. But Yeah, assuming that the environment is static and stable. It's kind of like assuming uh, we don't need to refrigerate this; it's already been cooked.
Right. Yeah. I almost wonder whether, with there being so many vulnerabilities now, it used to be like it was a big deal when there were vulnerabilities in something. It was big news. But now it's just kind of part of the day-to-day just economy. It just turns over, much like, like the weather. So I'm almost wondering whether, it's we overemphasize in some ways the vulnerability side of security, and we should be more and more focused on the resilience.
Yeah.
Yeah, and we do that to a degree, but I think we're still kind of hung up in the past a bit too much on, yes, we have to patch and the like, but let's start thinking about when our patching doesn't go right, rather than just we must patch. What are the other things we should be looking at in the bigger ecosystem, kind of the meta of all this? So
Yeah, yeah. Well, larger enterprises can't possibly patch everything that comes up. They have to rate manage
right,
their activity.
right,
If you're an enterprise and you have 1,000, 1,500 apps, you would be getting, you know, dozens, scores, maybe hundreds of patches every month. And you want to rate manage that stuff. You want to decide which ones are high, high severity. So practically, you say, well, let's take a look at everything we've got, which means you have to use your software asset management tool, and you've got to bounce it off the known exploited vulnerabilities list and see, anything that's on both, I want to take care of. Now, something can be on the KEV and you don't know you've got it, and that was Apache Struts, right? That was the Experian breach. But you got to know what you got, and you've got to be aware of what's out there. Now, yeah, 0 days are a big problem, but the number of major security breaches that have been caused by 0 days, excluding state-sponsored attacks, which are a whole different kettle of fish, 1/10 of 1%.
yeah, yeah. Yeah, it was a prediction that Gartner is still dying out on, which was the 99.99% of vulnerabilities will be ones that we've already known about for at least a year.
Yeah.
So,
yep.
Turns out on average 5 to 8 years, quite in some years.
So. Yeah, and that doesn't even. I don't know when that was done. Were they looking at IoT? Were they looking at industrial control systems?
I guess it's everything's in depending how you bound it, right? So, but once again, if it's a known vulnerability, especially older Windows machines and stuff like that, that's probably a bigger issue, I think, than net new 0 days in those. Hey, why should I burn a 0 day when I can just go back? Hey, look, it's Win95. Yay, it has been patched.
Right,
So,
right.
Yeah.
Well, TSMC, they were running robots, 100,000 of them that were running Windows 7, vanilla Windows 7. And as with the, hospital equipment in the US, the manufacturer requires that you don't dink the software. In the US, if you're a hospital and you dink the software in your hospital environment, you decertify it. Can't be used for medical purposes. The approval process takes 5 to 7 years.
Yeah, I think, but in nuance, one, if you have a good 0 day, and like we see with like a SolarWinds or something like that, when it's widely used, it can be exceptionally powerful. So yes, there is there's a bit of a disconnect between, rarity versus impact. So,
right.
But how many SolarWinds do we have happening? So yes, they're bad when they happen. They're big storms, but otherwise, like hey, put a roof on your house. Come on. So,
yeah, exactly. And the garden variety hacker who stumbles across a really valuable 0 day, if they have half a brain, they're probably going to sell it to an organization that will be able to monetize it much more effectively than they could on their own.
Right. Or in the case of what was alleged with SolarWinds, you make your own. You go and implant your own vulnerability.
Right.
So,
yeah.
Choose your own adventure. Why use somebody else's vulnerability when you can make your own? I'm going to make it really good.
That's right. Well, yeah, and if you have a well-funded organization whose purpose in life is to make life miserable for your company, then you're toast. There's not a lot. I mean, you may get lucky, but and this is the good point. It's a commonplace that the bad guys only have to get one thing right to win, whereas the good guys have to get everything right unless they lose. And it turns out that's not really true. The bad guys have to get like 7 things right, and that's the whole. Was it Lockheed Martin that came up with the cyber kill chain?
Right.
find a way in, and then I've got to find a way to establish. Then I've got to do some navigation and some planning, and download to perform the attack and so on. So yeah, you can.
Was it MITRE or Lockheed? I'm not sure. Yeah,
At
one
one
of those
point, I
two.
thought it was Raytheon, but
Maybe it was. Yeah,
corrected.
one
Maybe.
of those Beltway people. Yeah,
Yeah. That's right.
yeah. It came from the Beltway.
Yeah. So yeah, I mean, do put more than one layer of protection in. Got to do that.
Also resilience too, like this idea of, things will go bad. Let's just, operate assuming that, don't give up. But, and also for the things are much more connected now. So it's remarkable. The interdependencies that are there, or the unknown dependencies, are probably just as much of an issue today as are the unknown vulnerabilities.
Yeah.
Or
Yeah.
more.
Oh,
I'd say more. Yeah.
absolutely. Because it's not the unknown vulnerability that's going to take you down. It's the known vulnerability, and you don't know what its scope is. You don't know what you've got, or you don't know the second order effects. In fact, the crook who was just jailed for 11 plus years with the Thanatos blood testing stuff.
Right.
She was the one who said in an interview a couple of years ago that don't waste your time doing disaster recovery planning, because that's anticipating failure.
Wow.
It's like, that is close to the stupidest thing that I've ever heard any executive say anywhere. It's in the top 3. Let me give you the other 2. One was when an executive at IBM in 1985 said in a meeting at which I was present that the customers were stupid because they were spending money on PCs. When a senior executive tells you the customers are stupid, short the stock.
Yeah, yeah.
And the other one was I was doing a DR, interesting analysis of a small company that was about to be acquired, and they had no backup. They only had one person who specialized in each thing. I said, your entire environment is completely fragile. It is entirely vulnerable. If any one person here doesn't make it to work, you're hosed. And he said, no, you don't understand. We only hire people who are capable of writing top quality code, and they don't need backup. It's like,
wow. Yeah.
Wow. So those are my top 3 dumbest things relating to software that I have ever heard anyone say. There are more.
I have heard thousands of them, all in the Bay Area, all during advisory days. I just wanted to escape from. So, the kinds of things like the Oracle Unbreakable kind of campaign, which is really, you're going there. Your campaign is going to be your stuff is unbreakable. All right. Yeah.
I remember the CTO of Sun speaking at the inauguration of the Georgia Tech Information Security Center, announcing in front of 300 people with advanced degrees in computer science that the Java language was mathematically proved to be correct and secure.
Mm-hmm.
I was sitting next to the dean of the College of Computing, and I said, Peter, on behalf of all of us who actually do know something about computational theory, he says, I want to apologize. He says, I know what a Turing machine is. I'm like, yes, sir. That's that. But yeah, the hubris, it was one of those statements like, do you expect me to believe that? And if not, do you believe that? Just staggeringly.
You've mentioned Holmes, the Theranos, leader.
Yes.
Not too different from the kind of nonsense we're hearing from the crypto community these days. I don't mean crypto, and I mean, I should clarify that the cryptocurrency community, the blockchain evangelist community. It's remarkable. The most interesting one was after all this stuff has come to light, spending $300 million on property in the Bahamas, put it in the father's name, all this nonsense, not, their CFO had been 2 years, 2 years in the field, that there were still people, in an interview said, hey, look, this has crashed, it's gone bankrupt. Would you invest with this guy again? And people would hum and haw and say, yeah, I would. He's a visionary. It's like, wow, where do I sign you up? Be part of my.
There is a line between visionary and delusional, and
we'll keep politics out of it today. We won't touch on that, but there's parallels. But just remarkable, and I guess this is where the you know, a lot of the human nature in, you know, a lot of the ransomware that comes in that,
Yeah.
just keep
Yeah.
making the same
George,
mistakes.
who's the fellow, Kramer, Jim Kramer, said that the thing that's staggering to him is the number of people who are still pumping cryptocurrencies. And he said, I don't
Yeah.
say pumping and dumping. He says, these guys are still long.
Yeah. Yeah.
It's
Yeah.
it's the greater fool theory. I feel very bad because we just FTX is bankrupt, and what was the one, BT FinTech or something is just filed
Yeah.
for
There's been many,
bankruptcy.
yeah. There's another one now. So, and the commentary, even from the financial community, and the problem is there's segments of the analysis going on which are wholly invested in it. They're not really, uh, they're not as hands off or arm's length as they should be, because their jobs depend on covering this and the like. And they're, you know, they're saying, you know, this could be the low point. And after every sort of major catastrophe that happens with these, it's, you know, this could possibly harm the reputation of of the cryptocurrency community. Come on, dude, really?
Yeah, I got some great tulips. They're almost black.
Yeah. Uh, sadly, the blockchain itself, remarkable security technology, but yeah, it's just the, you know, if you took that out of there and said, hey, you know, I want you to give me a bunch of money, I'm going to hold it for you. I'm going to double your money in a month. Trust me.
Yeah.
No, I'm not going to trust you, but blockchain. Oh, okay.
Oh yeah.
You know, it's mystical, you know, these aren't the droids you're looking for.
Well, that's the inherent paradox, right? This anonymous fellow. I mean, we know a name, but we don't know the person. Comes up with a model, and he says this will allow us to manage finances without relying on a third party. Everybody jumps in and they give their money to third parties, and then the third parties take the money away. Like, gee,
Right.
what did we get wrong?
A small percentage of bad things happen in highly regulated environments. And I
Yeah.
understand the attractiveness of the anonymity of it, and that's fine, but there has to be safeguards against human nature or, you know, or crime. There's reasons these safeguards are there. It's not to just be big government and spy on you. There's reasons for this. Like, you know, Bernie Madoff, what more do you need to know? It's just,
Well,
history's full of this.
It's interesting because that's, you know, we need to deconstruct the notion of big government. We need to say, you know, when people organize themselves into social groups, they have to have some kind of organizing principles. Maybe it's the 10 Commandments. If we, you know, pick and choose, it's like, well, you know, um, I don't steal from him, but you know, I do something else and he kills me, and things fall apart. Not that that's the organizing principle; it's just a model. I mean, people establish governments in order to provide for the common welfare. I think I read that somewhere.
Yeah. Now, do I trust governments to react, eloquently and in a nimble manner when it comes to regulating cryptocurrencies or understanding it? No, I expect them to over-regulate and get it wrong.
Right.
So we have to temper that with saying, hey, look, you know, there's technology knowledge. So I'm a really huge fan of public-private partnerships or mixed committees, mixed direction advisory, where it's a mix of government and private. Because I think the private sector, if left to run things, would run amok. That's not good. That's, you know, kind of Atlas Shrugged territory. Whereas if you let the government, without the knowledge of what really goes on in industry, try to regulate something, they'll naturally get it wrong. It's like me trying to regulate medicine. I would miss a lot of issues and, you know, get a lot of things wrong, right? So you've got to have that subject matter knowledge, and it has to be balanced. If the balance, if you can get it right, it's a great thing. When you get it wrong, it's awful. But I'm involved in a number of public-private advisory groups that way, and it's, if you get it right, it can really be powerful. So
And striking that balance is so important. In fact, I remember hearing this was decades ago, comparison of the British parliamentary system with the U.S. congressional system, the tripartite governmental structure, and it works best when the three parties are, you know, somewhat mutually suspicious, and it breaks down when, you know, two of them appear to be colluding, may not be the right word, but the British parliamentary system, the thing that's better there is the civil service structure.
Correct. Yeah.
I mean, to me, that's like the success of the Office of Personnel Management in the U.S. military. I read, I'm trying to recall, I have it over here, Colin Powell's My American Journey, and he talks about when he was promoted to 3-star, there were 50. And the OPM person who was speaking to them at their congratulations says, I just want to emphasize to you how high the level of competition is to get to this. He said, if you were all on a transport heading to Europe and the plane went down in the North Atlantic, we would replace all of you by sunset.
Yeah.
So it's not like, you're
Yeah.
number
Yeah.
one. It works so damn well, military. You just don't get rogues in position. You can hear about a major who's gone amok, right? But you don't really hear about, a 2 or a 3-star who's gone off his rocker. Not very often. They do a pretty good job of weeding that. The same thing with the British Civil Service. I mean, they really do a fairly good job. Most of the European systems do a fairly good job comparison to what sometimes happens here when you have, well, again, we're not going to get into politics, but from a governance
Right.
perspective, what it means is there has to be room for subject matter expertise and competence. If you aren't able to build a business around that, then, it turns into
Yeah.
well, we both know companies where the ideal model when I was at Gartner was, 50% or so would be in product development and test and so on. 50% would be in sales and marketing. And we both know organizations where 80 or 90% of the budget goes into sales or marketing. You got 3 or 4 guys and gals in a room who are writing like crazy.
Yeah. Yeah. Those companies, but again, driven for investor purposes, not making things better or pure sales.
Yeah.
Having worked in the Canadian government, and when I got up to the sort of the little upper levels and started interacting with the ministers' offices, that used to be the case. So back in my vintage, which I left the government in in the 90s, there was that sort of ministers, elected people come and go, and we're going to keep the ship running. Yeah, they're going to tell us where we're going, but we run the ship and
Right.
kind of get it there. And there was could not interfere. Like a minister couldn't walk down into the IT organization and tell us to, hey, you're going to stop encrypting this stuff that goes out because we can't connect to enough people. They couldn't do that.
Right.
If that happened today, I'm not so sure. I think it's still not quite as strong as it used to be, but that kind of, that, we're looking out for Canada, we're looking out for the country. We know our jobs, and yes, we will take direction, but there's a limit. We won't do things that are wrong. We're going to keep the ship running. This is our job.
Yeah.
And when I worked with Elections Canada, which is the national elections organization, I was thoroughly comforted with the fact that there was zero political sort of tinkering could ever conceivably be allowed in there. I'm not naive either. Like, having worked in counterintelligence and policing, I know there's bad things can happen, especially from the, intelligence or the, the bad actor side. But I was very, very comforted by that. Which you don't see if you haven't worked there, of course. I wouldn't expect the average citizen to know that, but it's not hard to do, but it's culture, right? So how do we change culture?
This is tangentially related to something. I was in a conversation with some colleagues, and I was reminiscing on my very first code walkthrough when I went to work at IBM in Poughkeepsie in 1978. I was in the storage management group, Getmain, Freemain, and then later Pagefault and all that stuff. But I had written a piece of code, 120 lines or so, and we had a code walkthrough. And there were 5 men and women in the walkthrough. And as I sat down and began explaining this stuff, I got this chill when I realized that I was being audited by about a century of expertise. And it was humiliating, but also breathtaking. Because the rule, and I don't know how we hit about this. This was 78. The whole capability maturity model was still 5-8 years in the future. I mean, still, the idea that everybody in the room had to understand exactly what the algorithm did, or it would be discarded. Might be brilliant, but oops, lost you.